when you can. Smile when you can. Cry when you can. Darkness is temporary. A bad mood can't win the light.
Kasiko pesa mo kongote munana ngaye anana na 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 aye ye mawage ye
Good evening, friends and family. Welcome to Drizzles of Joy. We are quite excited to be having you this evening. My name is Winnie Mukhodzi, and we are driving our purpose with Drizzles of Joy this evening. And I'm looking forward to engaging with you tonight. But, we really want to thank God for giving us another time to be able to come sit in this fashion and be able to talk about issues that actually builds us as people and that actually makes us better people. And today, as you all know, we actually tackling a big issue around raising a boy child. And, I was actually thinking, because on my side, my boy child gives me like real gray hair, and and he's only 3 for that matter. But today we'll be tackling issues that actually affect us as a society and so forth. But firstly, I want to welcome my co-host. I'm not alone. I've got Sizwe Mahlangu, who is my co-host this evening, and I just want to welcome him. Welcome, Sizwe.
Good evening, Mama. How are you doing?
I'm good. And yourself?
I am very well. I'm very well. Welcome to our viewers at home, and greetings to you, everyone who'll be watching across across the virtual space. We are so pleased to have you with us today, and I'm so looking forward to the conversation. And maybe it will help us to solution for our boy kids and all the stages that they go through in life. I'm really looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah, I'm also looking forward. I think, we've got, somebody that is very knowledgeable around this issue, and I believe that we'll be able to do lots of justice to it. But before we start, maybe let me pray and thank the Lord for this time, and then we will be continuing to introduce our guest for today. Let us pray. Father, even this day, we want to thank you. You are holy, you are great, you are gracious. We humble ourselves before you. We glorify you. You are a faithful and a good God. Even today, Lord, as we engage in this topic, we pray for your wisdom and your guidance. We pray for our guest, my Lord. Use them mightily in Jesus' mighty name. Father, we want to thank you for this platform that allows us, Lord, to be able to engage and be able to help each other in situations whereby we struggle through the tests of life. Father, we humble ourselves. We thank you for this time and we bless you. Amen. Thank you once again, viewers. Please be sure to engage with us. We normally would not get a chance like this to be able to engage with a professor. And Caesar will be welcoming our guest. And as I said earlier, we are actually speaking around raising a boy child. Caesar, over to you as you welcome our guest.
Yeah, so to our guests at home, we've got such an exciting guest who is really been so kind enough to grace us. He is Professor Malose Langa, and he's a senior lecturer and an associate professor of psychology in the Department of Psychology out in the University of Witwatersrand. Not only that, he is also a psychologist in a private practice specializing in psycho-legal work based on his LLB degree. But more pointedly tonight, he's also got an awesome book. I see when I do my research, it was virtually launched, Mamruti, on June the 23rd, Becoming Men,
Yes.
loosely based on stories of some young men out of Alexandra. And it's Alexandra is probably the best place to probably, do this type of a setup and, about profiling young men. Prof, good evening. Welcome.
Hi, thanks, Sizwe, and
How are you?
hi to. I'm okay, and I'm honored to be here, and hi to Winnie.
Hi, welcome. We are really honored to have you this evening.
Yeah, Prof, thank you. The honor is like really, really ours, and we're looking forward to a great conversation. And Prof, I hope you're not shy. I know you're trying to get the poster in. If we can see more of you as well. Yeah, there it is.
Okay, sorry,
That's great.
I could see like
Don't
I
worry.
was, yeah.
We'll continue to profile the book throughout the show, Becoming Men, and I hope that you can give us examples from the book as well. Prof, if you could maybe just give us your background. Who are you? Where are you from? And what led you to this book, Becoming Men?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this book, like you mentioned in your introduction, was launched in June. But I mean, it was never part of the plan, and I've said this in a
Okay.
number of interviews, not to write the book. But how it started, I mean, it was in 2005. I was working at one of the correctional centers, and obviously that's prison. And in working in that space, I was quite shocked, to see so many young boys. I mean, serving all kinds of sentences. So obviously, I was working there as a psychologist, and then I had a conversation with them, I guess, as part of their rehabilitation. And in my
Yeah.
conversation with them, many of them said, "Look, we are here because kokasi, that's what it means to be a boy. You need to be stowed
Mm,
and do all kinds of
mm,
things." And then I was left with a lot of questions. I mean, to say, does it really mean for you to prove that you're a real boy, kokasi, you need to commit no crime? And that's
mm.
what led to my work. And I chose Alexandra purposefully because obviously, I mean, there's a lot of depiction of Alex as a violent sort of township.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
obviously, when
Yeah.
you read the book, you find the opposite of that, and we'll get into a lot of details as we go through our conversation about. Basically, I mean, the key question in my work was, what does it mean to be a boy in a new
Mm.
South Africa? And I'll share the
Wow.
details as we go along.
So while you are there, Prof, I just want to quickly ask, so where did you grow up? And in the space that you grew up, did you literally
Yeah.
see the same kind of scenario?
Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously,
Good question.
home is somewhere in Limpopo province, a remote rural area called Mapela. And
Okay.
partly in the book, I do talk about that upbringing, of growing
Mm,
up as a head boy and having to walk like a very long distance, to go to school.
yeah.
But also in retrospect, you then realize that one also paid like a heavy price in
Mm,
in in the whole sort of practice of what it means to be a boy. Yeah, I mean, so I don't want to rush the
yeah.
the
Yeah.
conversation, but one could sort of relate, and I'm sure some of the examples to be given, you as a mother of a 3-year-old
Mm.
boy can relate with, who sees you as a male person can relate with, and a lot of mothers who are listening to our conversation will
He's
be
got a
able to
boy
relate
as
with.
well. He's got a
Yeah,
boy as well.
yes.
Yeah. So, Prof, maybe to start with, let me ask, do you think our society kind of models a certain thinking around how a boy needs to grow up?
I mean, I guess the first point that I want to put to the fore, and I'm going to try and explain this more in detail, is that we need to acknowledge that the process of raising, like, boy children, and let's underline this. I'm saying the process of raising boy children, it is very violent.
Okay.
It is very dehumanizing in nature. It is very belittling in nature, and because and aggressive and traumatic. So hence now I argue in my work, given how boy children are raised, we can not then later in life expect them to be caring and loving partners or
Evan.
So obviously here,
Wow.
I argue, and I'll give you examples, to say, how is this process dehumanizing? How is this process traumatic? You say to a 3-year-old boy, you can run faster. Boy, you can do better. Boy, you can be strong. Boy, you can be tough. Boy, you can be this. And if a boy is not able to be strong, is not able to be tough, what happens? And the example that I normally give, you go to any preschool, okay? And this is an experiment that has been done repeatedly. You find a group of young boys between the age of 2, 5, or 7. You say to them in a group, who is the weakest of all?
Yeah.
All of them will say, not me, not me. And they may then point one boy whom they regard as weak. So that boy who's being pointed at as being weak, he has two options. The first option is to push them back, to say, I'm not weak. Or is to cry and sort of run away. And obviously, if he runs away, he's going to be laughed at. And the parents may also react to say, no, you can't come to us crying. You need to go back and prove that you're a boy. And hence, the violence that you see, I'm of the view to say it's not starting later in life. You go to the playground, in the crash, and even parents, when they see boys playing roughly, they say, no, it's boys being boys. But when girls play in that way, or a girl is playing amongst the boys and playing rough, that girl immediately is going to be told that you must play like a girl.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, in concluding this point, is that gender is a social construct. There is nothing natural about being a boy or being a girl.
Yeah.
And we tend to conflate gender and sex. Sex it refers to the sex organs, and gender is something else. But even mothers already, you as a mother of a 3-year-old boy, you already have gender stereotypes, okay, that you pass on to your girl child, that you pass on to your boy child. Usizo as a father has his own gender stereotypes that he passes on to his boy child. So obviously then it becomes repetitive and repetitive and repetitive. And obviously then we need to then start questioning some of the practices, to say, what are the benefits of me as a mother, of me as a father, teaching my boy child 1, 2, 3, 4. But also what are the costs? So if we're to deal with a lot of problems, the problems that we are faced with in the world, in terms of violence, we are ranked number 3. We're the most violent country in the world.
What?
Okay, we have a high rate of we've seen it during lockdown in terms of substance abuse. Okay, and obviously in terms of gender, it would be males and males and males. We perpetrate so much violence. So when I talk about this, I'm not surprised that even our gender-based violence will continue to be very, very high. And continue to be very, very high. And what is very sad is that we want to intervene like at that level of, okay, let's engage our men. But I'm of the view to say we need to engage.
Hello, Prof.
Okay. I think
our boy human. Basically, they need to be they basically need to be human.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sizwe?
Wow. Yo, Professor, you've left me speechless. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. I'm here.
All right.
Yes, I can hear
cool.
you, Sizwe.
So,
yes.
Prof, okay, thank you so much. Let me just establish the conversation with Mam Rotiwini. Mama, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, awesome. Yo, Prof, in the Christian circles, we say after a preacher is preached that Nisuti. It's just in your intro, Nje. Wow, you gave really powerful stuff. And it's not only us having the conversation, so we do have our guests and our viewers at home who are also tuned in. So welcome to you viewers who are watching. Please engage with us. I'm sure you have questions. I'm sure you have experiences based on the subject we're talking about. So please pop us your comments, pop us your questions. We've got the professor in the house, and you can already hear he's dishing it out. Prof, so maybe linking your opening statements and your book and the subject we're talking about, based on the context of your book and the setting that you picked from, it's you profiled guys from Alexandria. Now, is this challenge, or is this phenomena of becoming a man in this type of way that you're describing? Is it a racial thing? Do we find it amongst other races, whites, colored Indians? Or is this a particular way we as Black Africans people raise our young men?
Yeah, obviously, I mean, race does matter, as you have seen it with, like, Black lives, like, no matter. Race does matter. Class does matter. And obviously, I mean, there will be differences. Okay, so obviously, in the work that I do, there's a term that we use entitled, like, hegemonic, like, masculinity.
Okay.
So hegemony drawn from the word, like, power, and masculinity from the word masculine. Okay, and then we say, in terms of race, you take the history of, like, South Africa. You had, like, white, like, masculinities. So obviously, in terms of the hierarchy, white men were at the top of the hierarchy. Hence, they could call our fathers boys, despite the fact that some were even older than them. Okay, so obviously, race does matter, and the notion of, like, masculinity will differ in terms of culture, will differ in terms of race, will differ in terms of even class. So obviously, here with boys in Alexandra, these are, like, mainly working class, like, boys. But in terms of the mainstream literature, is that there's this depiction that young boys from township behave in a particular way. They're gangsters, they commit crime, they're violent, and so on and so forth. Okay, and obviously based on, like, stereotypes. So in the book, what you begin to see, I met these boys when they were between the age of 12 and 13, and I tracked them from 2007 till 2018. Okay, so I've been with them over a period of, like, 12 years. And in my interaction with them, you begin to see a different picture. As I speak with you right now, it's only one who's in jail. Okay, and the rest are not in jail. They were able to complete their matric, and they're working now. Some, I mean, have moved out of LX. And what you begin to see is that it was not easy for them to deal with all these pressures that many young boys sort of, like, face. And they were able to navigate all these, like, tensions. So obviously, what I conclude in the book is that we need to create safe spaces for young boys to talk about their fears and anxieties. So with this group of boys, there were 32 in total, but obviously I was able to trace about 12 to 14 of them over a period of 12 years. In the process, they will talk about their relationship with their mothers. They will talk about their absent fathers. They will talk about girlfriends. They will talk about some boys identify themselves as Christian, and how now and then they will be teased that when Omzalwani, because of teachings at church, you have not had sex, and for them coming out, to say, I'm very proud, to be a virgin, and like even at church, there's this sister that I can talk to. So obviously, is that it is not easy being like a boy child. You encounter all kinds of difficulties and difficulties.
Yeah.
But spaces need to be created, and one of the conclusion is that religion is a protective factor, especially if at church there are also spaces, is that spaces, I guess, for young men to be who they are, allowed to talk about challenges that they face, not to say no, you can't say this in church, you can't bring that to church, and it makes a huge difference.
Wow.
Powerful.
Yeah, so that's very powerful. We've got some questions from our viewers. We're just going to read the first one. I think that's my husband. He says, help me as father of 3 years old to bring him up as a good man. Do we hug and embrace? To what extent without making him a sissy boy?
You see, the last part, the last part is the one that is problematic.
Yes.
Because we have what we call typologies of what it means to be a male person. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll give you some of them. There's what we call no sissy stuff. No sissy stuff is that you can't show feelings and emotions. The other typology, you call it give him a hell. The only feeling that you can express is that of aggression. There's what we call a steady oak. There's what we call a big will. You must aspire, you must achieve, and so on and so forth. So obviously, if you're a man, you have not achieved, you're not a good man. And hence, some feel the need to be part of gangs, so that I'm able to buy Louis Vuitton, I'm able to buy Lacoste, I'm able to have a Gucci, I'm able to do all kinds of things. So obviously, I'm of the view to say boys need a lot of hugs, and they need to be kissed at all the time. And in fact, there's an experiment that was done that is, in fact, boys prefer to get kisses from their fathers, but it's the fathers themselves who are not compatible.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's the fathers themselves who are not compatible. The boy child wants to hug, and the father is running away. Hence, when I say the whole process of raising a boy child is traumatic, people think it's when they're being physically violent. The trauma that I'm talking about, it is symbolic in nature. Okay, the boy wants to hug, wants to kiss, and the father is just keeping a distance. But also, what we found is that mothers also have the same reaction. Here, I'll be quite explicit. What we found is that even in terms of breastfeeding, how mothers breastfeed the girl child is quite different on how they breastfeed the boy child. It is very unconscious. Even the winning process, how they win the boy child as compared to how they win the girl child is quite different. So with the boy child, they're being pushed at a very young age to individuate, that you are not the same. You should be having a good relationship with my husband as a father. Okay, he's been pushed to say you need to move towards a male sort of figure. Then in instances where the male figure is not there, because we know that many children in South Africa are being raised by mothers alone. Okay, many boy children grew up without fathers, and obviously then now and then I get a question to say, how does that then get negotiated?
Wow.
A lot sort of happens. Even questions, was this a planned or unplanned pregnancy? and then the gender of the child now gets known even before the child is born. All those dynamics sort of contribute, but it's also us carrying our own intergenerational sort of trauma, your own trauma. Because I argue in some of my writings, to say motherhood is about how you're mothered. Fatherhood is also about how you're fathered, but also it's about the fantasies that you have as a mother, as a father.
Yeah, and what you're saying is quite interesting, because but with me maybe it's different. I'm that person that loves, so my son, he likes kissing me. So and I see my husband doesn't like this kissing thing, and it's like, what's wrong with this boy? He likes kissing, and I give him that affection because I believe that kids love affection, so you just need to give it to them. But as you were saying, that the issue of CC, I think that is the one issue that we don't normally look at, and it goes back to the point of saying that most of the time when we raise boy children, we tend, especially when you have a girl and a boy, you can see the difference of how you raise your kids. The girl needs to be domesticated. The girl needs to make sure that they are clean and all that. But with a boy, some of these things you just let them, because he's a boy. He needs to be masculine. He needs to be, and it becomes a problem, because my thinking is that, hypothetically, who said that when you have a boy child, he's going to get married and somebody's going to take care of him? No, why can't we teach them the same way? I can teach my daughter how to put a globe. I can teach my son how to clean thoroughly or to cook properly. And I think that's the kind of thinking that I'm coming to say that as a society, is it the way, as you say, the way that we raise our children, and it comes from growing up, and it's traumatic, and I understand, because
I think you can come in there,
I'm
Prof.
still here. I'm not sure if you can hear me, Winnie.
I can hear you loud and clear, Prof.
Maybe obviously, I guess for me that is quite interesting. So my point here is that we can have and not to say matches do not bring change. The matches hashtag this Me Too movement, I'm not saying they're not bringing change, but the real change is with us, because with what we are saying is that we are also complicit as parents. We are also complicit as uncles. We are also complicit as fathers, as parents in raising the boys that we raise. Okay, and we need to get to that point where we emotionalize our boy children, and if they emotionalized, they're able to talk about their feelings. Because if you look at gender-based violence, we have facts to prove to this, that when does a male person kills a female person is when the relationship ends. Okay, and obviously if you have to think about that, one has to then accept that the relationship has ended, and now I need to mourn for the loss of a relationship, but I do not have the emotional capacity to mourn for the fact that the relationship has ended. So the only thing that is I must just kill this person.
Ish.
And when I kill this person, I'm asserting my control and power over this person, to say you can't cause me such an emotional pain. Hence, even men feel the need to have multiple girlfriends. It's out of fear. It's not out of wena usijabana. It's out of fear. It's out of fear that I cannot invest my energy onto one person.
Okay.
Because then that is going to expose my fragility when the relationship has ended, to say I'm such an emotional person. So obviously if the relationship ends, I have the next person in waiting.
Yeah, man.
I don't have to deal with the loss of something that is sort of ended. But obviously, it gets naturalized, to say, yeah, men are driven to have multiple girlfriends. But in fact, behind that, there's a lot of fear and anxiety.
We've got another question. You wanna read it, Sizwe?
Yeah, sure. We've got a regular, Smangele. She says, as a sister who had an opportunity to raise my brother, I found it traumatic to me personally, as I could not relate to what he was going through growing up without a father and not having a role model that he could look up to in the family. I have friends who have boy children who are struggling with the same. How would you advise women who are raising boys as single mothers?
Yeah, thanks very much for the question. And obviously, in my practice, obviously as a psychologist, you deal with women, in very abusive marriages and relationships, and some have children. And the fear that I've always had in answering this question is that, look, if I leave my abusive partner, my abusive husband, what is going to happen with my boy child? Okay. So obviously here I need to underline something, is that yes, of course, fathers play a significant role in children's life, irrespective of gender. But obviously, if it's a boy child, the research does show that, yeah, they play a significant role.
Yeah.
But you also need to be careful around this discourse of seeing fathers as a panacea of everything. Because the other evidence is that, in fact, other boys having fathers in their lives has been a source of pain.
Yeah.
Fathers have not brought any joy. Okay. So in the book, what you read with many of these boys in Alex, where many of them had no fathers. But in fact, they saw their mothers as role models. Okay. That the mothers played a significant role. But obviously, as you can read in the message, that process is not an easy process. It can also be very traumatic.
Yeah.
Because even for some of the mothers, in talking to them, it was like, look, it was not easy. Now and then I was struggling raising this boy child. But then if we're to have many conversations, so obviously at the end I was saying we need to celebrate Black mothers for the role that they play. I work in prison. Come to prison on Saturday. 80 to 90% that come, 90% of people that come and visit inmates are women and mothers.
Oh my God.
90. It would be very rare to see a male person or a father coming there to see his boy child. Very rare.
True.
Sure.
So we also need to acknowledge the positive role that mothers sort of play. So it would be that, to say you do that. You show your boy child love. You show them care. You become open in talking to them about the difficulties that they face. You become open in talking to them about sex, relationships, and even the fact that the father is not there and how they feel about that. But remember also, mothers have their own feelings about this same absent father. And if the mother has also not healed from that pain of, this man has left me when I was pregnant, or he did this and he did this, unconsciously, that pain may also be transferred to the boy child. So obviously I'm of the view to say, for us to break all this, we need a healing as a nation. Okay, the role that churches need, because I'm of the view to say churches have a good access to community members, have a good access community members, and they have a positive role to sort of play, and which many churches are already sort of playing. So if in our church we're to then say, how many mothers do we have? How many boys are they raising? Suize can be a role model, to some of these boys. But obviously, he needs to also move from the fact that he's occupying a leadership position.
Okay.
Because obviously, I mean, if you read the book, I mean, the first 2 years, these boys were just seeing me as this guy who's from Vex.
Yeah.
They were like Mr. Sorenso, Mr. Sorenso, Mr. So it created a bit of a distance.
A barrier.
And then we
Yeah.
go, and then they realize, oh, this chap, we can talk to him about
Anything.
a lot of things, and he's not going to pass judgment. Later, some disclosed to say,
Sure.
look, I'm into like same-sex relationships, but at that time, I did not feel comfortable sharing this with you. I lied to you when I said I had sex with my girlfriend. In fact, I've never had sex, but I thought you would then think, I've never had sex. But in fact, I'm very proud of this.
Wow. Yeah, it's quite interesting, and the pressures that these kids find themselves. Let's quickly read these two, and then we're going to continue with our questions. We've got another one from Tabo. He says, "Please forgive me. I kissed, but my father forgot to show me how to do it before he left. Give me time. I'm learning, traumatically so." And then we've got another one. Busi. She says, "You'll blink once, he'll be in university. Don't take too long. They grow up fast." I think it was something that you were talking about that I missed earlier.
Yeah, I think it's an answer to Thabo Mokhoti about not kissing.
Yeah.
And remember, so as parents, we're also carrying our own traumas. We carrying our own traumas, and then we passing. Hello?
We're here, sir. We're here, Prof.
Oh, sorry. I mean, I think there's a phone ringing on my. I mean, we passing some of this like no trauma. So I'm of the view to say, especially with South Africa, the history of like apartheid cannot be undermined, and its effects even right now. I'm not surprised that Click's advert. Yes, we may have different views on it. For me, it's an indication of our unresolved like traumas that we can continue to carry. Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously, if we're to think about your father Caesar and think about Winnie's father, if Winnie's father was a pastor and everything, obviously, I mean, there's something that he carried, but there and they was able to break the cycle. And Winnie's breaking the cycle, and Otawa is breaking the cycle, and Usuzo is breaking the cycle, and slowly, bit by bit, we are breaking the cycle. Bit by bit. Okay, because then the other thing is that when we talk about black men, there's this negativity of like we are trash and we are trash and we are trash. Okay, but obviously there are also positive stories. But the problem is that we'll have this conversation, and it will be how many of us. Okay, but if I ask who's Mashoban, if you're from Mamelodi or you are from somewhere, everyone would know he's a gangster. He's known by almost like everyone. Okay, so his story will even appear in the Sunday world. But Utabo Mokhosi's story that he's doing this great community work somewhere where you guys live, it will never feature anywhere. Now it's 7:09. Someone is like, "Hey, Uzalo is like coming very soon. I need to go and watch Uzalo." Okay, but you look at the content of Uzalo, there's misogyny and violence and guns, but the viewership is skyrocketing. It's very hard. So what are we saying? Then we're saying, no, we need to deal with the problem of violence. But when we are sitting and having our dinners,
that's what
we are being fed. We are being fed with so much violence.
Sure.
What a contradiction. And we celebrate it.
Yeah.
Prof, if I can just come in with the question there. So a couple of years ago, I think I don't know if it was Celsi who championed the campaign, take a girl child to work.
Yes.
And I think as the years have come on, it's and I was funny enough, I was having a discussion with Pastor Mokhoti about that. It looks like we're leaving behind the boy child. So now it's not only in families, but even the corporate space or government, And yes, even with now with the whole messaging around, gender-based violence and whatnot, then comes that messaging, men are trash, men are trash. So it just feels as if constantly, on maybe 2 or 3 generation, black men, are just being hammered. How do we? I know you spoke about, yeah, we're trying to change this, the breaking the cycle bit by bit. How do we break all of those things? How do we do it? Because it looks like there's just no winning for the male.
Yeah, nice question.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, look, when we started doing this work, where we said, look, it is important that we work with boys and men, there were criticisms, to say, are we? I mean, it obviously in an academic cycle, someone said these are like phallocentric studies. Phallocentric from a French word, the phallus meaning, the penis. To say, again, there's a preoccupation with the phallus, and in fact, men are at the center, and they continue wanting to be at the center and further marginalized like no women.
Okay.
But our response to that is that if we acknowledge that men perpetrate like no violence, they also need to be part of the solution. And for them to be part of the solution, they need to acknowledge that there's some privilege that they enjoy. There's a privilege that you and I, Sizwe, enjoy. We cannot walk alone at night.
True.
Okay.
On the basis
I
that
hear
she's
you.
a woman.
I
Okay.
hear you.
So obviously in this we need to acknowledge we need to. I mean, I do not want to be seen as an exception. To say, yes, we need to. It's a bit of a contradiction, to say the good black man. But if there is only the two of us, and then the rest are not, inverted commas, like no good men, you and I indirectly are implicated.
True.
Even though we're an exception. So you have a duty to bring everyone on board so that you're not an exception.
Yeah.
But you also acknowledge that I have some privilege that I enjoy, and I'm going to use my power to effect change.
And I like that while you're there, Prof, like the interesting part is that if you look at it, I don't personally believe that, there's more men that are not good compared to the men that are good. It's just that the men that are good don't actually come out to say, here we are, what can we do to better the situation? And I can assure you, if you look at this situation, if we have these good men that would come together and say, let's go and influence those that are not good, to say, how do we change this environment? I believe that we can come out with something good, because I personally believe that there are a lot of good men out there. It's just that they are just diluted, like as you have said before, to say that when someone does something wrong, we will see it in the newspapers, but it's very rare that when you see Sizwe doing good, he will be published everywhere to say there's this Samaritan man that is doing a good job. And I think, we need to turn around things and have all the men that are doing good in their community to start, coming out. And maybe, as you said earlier, that the issue might be the fact that when you have these men that are going to church and they are, good men, humble, they are looked at as sissies. I think it's better to be looked at as a sissy that is changing the world than a sissy that is sitting there and doing nothing.
Yeah, but also, I mean, I fully agree with you, Winnie. I fully agree with you. I mean, there's a paper that I wrote called a black man on trial in absentia, the case of Oscar Pistorius. And it nearly got me into trouble.
Wow. Yeah.
So basically saying the intruder behind the door
Yes.
was not a white
Yes.
man, was a black man.
It was a
Okay.
black guy.
So obviously then let me expand on this. Is that in whose interest Suso will not be shown, because it's not serving interest of global sort of like no politics. Because remember, gender is not negotiated Utsakani or somewhere in Kuruleni. It is part of the bigger global system. Okay? And the system that is racial in nature. And I argue to say, for real change to happen in terms of gender, it cannot happen with all these inequalities. We'll be lying to ourselves. So obviously, like now, if you look at Moja Love channel, you look at what is being shown in there. It's quite worrisome, because what you see, it's a black pain, and us in fact even laughing at the black pain. You know, utata wako ini, you know, it's about black suffering and black suffering. But will not have I mean, if you were to take this drizzles of joy to say, I want this to be more out there and be more public and everything, I don't think it will go far. Because what you'll want to cover, it's about celebration of, let me say, black lives. It will not go far. You know, it will not have a good viewership. So obviously, sorry to use a strong word on this like no platform of saying something pornographic about a suffering of like no black people. So the results of joy would not be big unless now you want to focus on something negative.
True.
And something negative and then it is within what is expected. It is within what is expected. It is not out of the norm. Hence, when Oscar Pistorius has done something, psychologists need to be called to come and explain what may have happened with him emotionally. When a Dross rapist did what he did, psychologists had to be called. But when I have done something similar to that,
go to jail.
I mean, it's expected my trial will not even be shown. I mean, I'll just be processed and be processed.
Yo.
Wow.
I'm not an exception.
Yo.
And I'm of the view to say, yes, let's use more platforms such as this to promote joy and promote like certain sort of like voices.
Wow.
Sure.
There will be one or two mothers that are listening now. There will be one or two fathers that are listening. And we are slowly planting seeds and planting seeds and planting seeds. And maybe you and I may not reap the seeds.
Yeah.
But maybe the next generation will have it better and have it better. So I do not want this doom and gloom to then like, okay, let's give up.
Okay, we've got another question here. We've got literally 10 minutes and then we should be closing the show. It's getting very interesting and nice and hot in here.
It is.
How does one deal with the trauma of thinking you are a failure? If as a parent, you have done all you could to show the love, affection, support, but your son does not become what you desire.
You know, I've had this question on a number of occasions, where parents will say, "Look, but I've been a good parent, and I did all the best, you know, to raise my boy child or my girl child in the best way, and I don't know where I've gone wrong, doc. I mean, please try and sort of like help me." But then when I begin to unpack what is good, many parents, I mean, given our mobility, our class mobility, is that no, I took this child to the best school. I bought
Yeah.
them whatever that they wanted. If they wanted
Yeah.
Samsung, I bought them a Samsung. If they wanted a Gucci bag, I bought them a Gucci bag. They had all what they wanted. And that's what is very unfortunate, that many of us define good parenting in terms of how much I'm able to offer.
Mm.
And then subjectivity of a person does play a role, that whatever that you consider to be good in the other who's receiving may not be considered to be good. And I've had so many children or young adults saying, I'm so mad at my parents. And then when you look at these parents have done their best. They've taken this child to send what, and send what. This child is now advanced doing first year or second year or third year. And I can't understand the bitterness. But the bitterness then, when I begin to unpack it, is that, look, I wanted to have this close relationship with my father.
Yeah.
But my father, of course, was a big will man. He was pursuing tenders. And like, we need to make it and make it and make it. When he's at home, he's watching news. If he's not watching news, he's reading newspapers. If he's not, he's forever busy. Well, he's someone who has been there. He has been at home almost every day. But I don't remember going back to Tabo, example. I don't remember him just having a father-son conversation with me. And even with my mother, because worried about the deadlines, the meetings and everything. Hence, in my other paper that I just completed now, to say, yes, COVID-19 had a very negative, impact. But also for some families, I know it did something quite spectacular. Because the father had no excuse of saying, hey, I have a meeting. He had to be at home. And then we had nothing to do. Okay. And in fact, I wish there was a lot of load shedding where there is no TV, there is nothing. And the phones were dead. Okay.
Yeah.
Then we had to be with one another.
To talk. Yeah.
To talk.
Wow.
And relate.
Sure. Wow, that is
so the
powerful.
mobility also may have this unintended negative consequences.
That's true.
Because then I cannot say this in confidence or what, but it was quite interesting. I mean, I'm not sure if you saw the headline of Sunday World, where Njim Tera's son is like just smashing cars, and what is reported is that the child obviously is taking drugs. Okay, so obviously then, but I mean, she's the whole minister, has been a minister her entire life. And obviously, I mean, this child must have had a good life and everything. But then because normally it's like, no, it's Nyope boys from Ko Alex, Nyope boys from Ko Kai. But maybe that's not always the case.
I think, this was very interesting. I think there are people that are asking for part 2 of this. I think it has been very,
we need a part 2.
Yeah, I think Steve, maybe, I don't know, for the last part of the 5 minutes, anything that you want to ask Prof, and then we can be able to wrap up.
I think sure. I've got so many questions. I mean, I thought of the where Trevor Noah made the joke about how we expected River Steenkamp to be murdered by a black person and not a white person, even before you said that. And another thing that you mentioned about now substance abuse, for this, black child. But I've also found that, Doc, that it's I know a family that is very well off, very successful. The father was always busy and whatnot, and I can say it messed up the son, white family. And I think even today the chap is really still struggling, So maybe let's leave the river one and the expectation for the black guy to always be wrong. But let's take this one. Now that maybe Mjita, black, white, colored, Indian, whatever, is now into substance abuse as this man trying to fill a void. how do you break them out of that stronghold? Or because now they've just using substances maybe to fill a void, but how do you go to the root and be able to solution for that?
I think it's a good question, Caesar, and I think you've given an answer. To fill the void, and it's what I've said. I mean, look, I'm a researcher, I'm an academic, so each question I do a research. I mean, there was an article that I wrote based on one rehab. I went to a rehab and collected data, and what I concluded simply was that there's what we call a revolving door. Where people get admitted and then they leave and then they come back, and out of them they've been to like I don't know how many rehabs. And then what I said at the end is that look, is because rehabs look at the symptom. The symptom is the substance. They're not looking at
All
the void.
right.
What has led to the void. So let's look at the void, the real cause. The real cause, it may be this trauma. The real cause could be this depression. The real cause could be this anxiety. The real cause could be this eating disorder. The real cause could be this history of abuse. It, that's what we need to focus on. And if you focus on that, I'm of the view that you may completely break the cycle, because people self-medicate. You self-medicate. What are you medicating? I'm medicating the head. I'm medicating the pain. Hence, men drink excessively because they're not allowed to talk about the head. They're not allowed to talk about the pain.
Wow.
So if they were to be allowed to talk about the head and the pain, maybe they will drink less. And they will start living a healthy life, like start and be human. I mean, it's so unfortunate that you are not allowed to be human and enjoy this life.
Wow. I'm going to read two last messages from our viewers and then we'll be wrapping up. Busi says, teens, on the other hand, are the ones that don't have time. They are always on their cell phones and irritable without them. What are we to do? Let me read this other one and then we can wrap up as we do that. Do you want to read that, Caesar?
All right, as soon as it comes on screen. All right, this is from Dottie Innovation. All right, it says, "Die Swart Gevaar." Oh, yeah, I remember that from history. Is the shadow of that brown skinned people themselves unable to shake off as they affirm it in ways that proves that they've been taught well to hate self. When self when self is hated, the enemy no longer needs to be present to put him down. He does it excellently all by himself. Sure, okay. Wow, that's deep.
Yeah, maybe, Prof, as you answer that, you can answer it as we close, and then also maybe give us information on where to get your book, and then, for our viewers, if they want to get your book, where they can get it. I'm giving you an advertising platform. So just answer those two, and then I'm giving you an advertising platform.
Just before
It is
Prof
fine,
comes
Winnie.
in,
I'm
can you
sure
also
I'm
answer
sure
if
we'll have
he's
the second round. I mean, where we can be, because I think I tried to cover almost everything. So you need a conversation
Yeah,
on substance abuse, of
yeah.
like the treatment itself. I mean, but look, the last question, I think we just celebrated. It was the anniversary of Steve Biko. When you read that
Steve
quote
Biko?
about
Yeah,
self hate, I mean, I guess it explicitly talks to that point. And the issue of cell phones, I mean, and young people being irritated, I guess it goes back to sort of no parenting, because for me, I'm of the view to say each family has to have its own values, and values are things that you inculcate. But obviously now parents have outsourced parenting. We have outsourced it to the same cell phones.
yo,
At
Yes.
times we are okay that a child is busy with a cell phone, because then they
That's
don't become a nuisance, So it's all these contradictions, but I also do not have a blueprint on what is that parents need to do. We can have a conversation, but yeah, I mean, I guess in conclusion, it was such a pleasure, to be part of drizzles of joy. And yeah, I mean, the book is available at all exclusive books in South Africa. But yeah, I'm also available for further conversations, because for me it is part of that agenda to say, look,
Yeah.
as I'm being racial about it, as Black people, we need to converse and converse and converse.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Sure.
much, Prof. And I think we're going to have you again, because I would want to have that discussion around substance abuse. You know, I think many of us might have found ourselves in a situation whereby you grow up in an environment, hypothetically, where your father has been abusing substance, and it affected some of us in a negative way. But and I believe that, you know, as you said earlier, that, you know, we can break some of these cycles, you know, to say that where to from now and how do we resolve for these kind of issues. And thank you so much. We are really, really honored to have had you today. And I think, you know, it was, you know, what you said was a mouthful. And I believe that, you know, obviously, if we need you, we will give you a call. And thank you for honoring us with this 1 hour of your time. I know that when I asked you to come, you were saying to me, hey, kids, and I understand that, you know, normally the evenings are time to spend with our children. But thank you. We really appreciate you being with us.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Sizwe,
Prof. Thank you so much.
And all the best.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, Prof. I think you really gave really, really wonderful words. Yeah, everything was just so on point, and we're looking forward to having him again. I enjoyed the show. I enjoyed the content. I enjoyed the conversation. And I hope all our viewers at home also enjoyed it. And we're looking forward to a part 2 in the near future. Thank you so much, Mamrud.
Thank you, Sizwe. Thank you, our viewers, for watching with us. We were quite humbled to have a Prof. Langa, and I believe that you have learned as much as I have learned, and we're looking forward to having you again next week as we continue with some of the interesting topics that we will be tackling in the coming weeks. And we trust that you enjoyed yourself, and thank you for engaging with us. Truly, it's always humbling to get these kind of questions, because they build us as well as we grow together and, you know, building our purpose, driving our purpose. And just a reminder, my book is still there. Please get yourself a copy of Called to Be a Pastor's Kid. And we trust that it will do you well as you read it, and it will actually help you to be able to make sure that you become that part of your church that is needed. May the good Lord richly bless you, and have a blessed night. My name is Winnie Muhodzi, and good night.
Darkness is temporary. A bad mood can't win the light.